The upcoming week on Beyond the Gates signals a quiet but meaningful escalation, one that relies less on spectacle and more on emotional displacement, fractured loyalties, and the unsettling realization that familiar worlds are beginning to overlap. At the center of this shift is a new crossover thread with the young and the restless, not framed as a flashy event, but as something far more insidious, a professional opportunity that pulls characters out of their emotional comfort zones and places them in spaces where power, history, and unspoken judgment collide. The week of January 2630 does not announce itself with explosions or arrests, but with something arguably more dangerous exposure. Bradley Smitty Smith being forced to spend the night away from home is not presented as a crisis on the surface, yet in the emotional grammar of this show, displacement is never neutral. Home has always represented control for Smitty, a carefully curated environment where he knows his role, his limits, and his value. Being removed from that space, even temporarily, strips away more than convenience. It destabilizes his sense of grounding at a moment when multiple fault lines in Fairmont Crest are already under strain. One night away becomes a mirror, forcing Smitty to confront how thin the line has become between obligation and isolation, between loyalty and exhaustion, and how little room he has left to retreat when pressure mounts from every direction. At the same time, the narrative pivots toward a far more volatile confrontation as Grayson Perez and Derek Baldwin are set on a direct collision course. This is not merely a clash of personalities, but a reckoning built on simmering resentment, divergent moral compasses, and competing interpretations of truth. Grayson has long operated from a place of controlled intensity, someone who believes that precision and restraint equal strength, while Derek has increasingly embraced confrontation as both a weapon and a shield. Their face-to-face encounter is less about the immediate argument and more about what it represents to men who have been circling the same unresolved questions for months, now forced to articulate what they truly believe about loyalty, accountability, and the cost of silence. The show smartly positions this conflict against the broader backdrop of instability, allowing their confrontation to feel inevitable than sensational. It is the kind of moment that does not end when the scene cuts away, but instead reverberates through every subsequent interaction, reshaping alliances and quietly redrawing lines that once felt permanent. What elevates this week further is the introduction of a new crossover layer with the young and the restless, one that feels organic rather than promotional. Chelsea Hamilton and Catherine Cott Richardson preparing for a meeting at Fenmore's is more than a logistical detail. It is a symbolic crossing of borders. Fenmore's is not just a store, but an institution within the Y and our universe, a space synonymous with legacy, taste, and quiet authority. For Chelsea and Cott, stepping into that environment is a test of legitimacy. Their brand, Chelsea Get, has always existed at the intersection of ambition and vulnerability, fueled by creative vision but shadowed by personal history. The possibility that their bags could be sold through Fenmore's transforms a business meeting into a referendum on whether they are finally ready to be taken seriously on a larger stage. This is where the question of Lauren Fenmore's presence or absence becomes so loaded. Lauren Fenmore does not need to appear on screen for her influence to be felt. Her reputation alone carries weight. The mere suggestion that her store could become a retail home for Chelsea introduces attention rooted in approval, legacy, and the fear of falling short under scrutiny that cannot be managed or softened. For Cott, this pressure converges with something far more personal. As she prepares to navigate this professional milestone, she is simultaneously bracing for a shock that threatens to destabilize her sense of control altogether. The narrative carefully withholds the full nature of this revelation, allowing anticipation to build. But what is clear is that the impact reaches beyond surprise into the realm of emotional reckoning. Cott has always balanced confidence with defensiveness, and this moment exposes how much of her composure is performative, maintained through sheer force of will. Compounding this is the reaction from her mother, Nicole Dupree, whose impending confrontation with Cott carries its own emotional gravity. Nicole does not scold lightly, and when she does, it is rarely about surface-level mistakes. Her disappointment tends to cut deeper because it is rooted in fear that her daughter is moving too fast, trusting too freely, or repeating patterns that Nicole herself once struggled to escape. The reprimand Cott receives is not merely about what she has done, but about what Nicole believes it says about who Cott is becoming and whether ambition is once again eclipsing self-preservation. This layered tension professional opportunity colliding with familial judgmentus where Beyond the Gates operates at its strongest. Cott is forced to compartmentalize in real time, to present confidence in a boardroom-adjacent space while absorbing emotional blows at home, all without the luxury of pause. The show understands that true drama often lives in this duality, in the exhausting effort required to keep moving forward while the ground beneath one's feet feels increasingly unstable. Chelsea, too, is not immune to this pressure. Though she projects enthusiasm and readiness, there is an undercurrent of anxiety in how much this meeting represents. Fenmore's is not just a retailer, it is a gatekeeper. Success there could validate years of struggle, while rejection could reopen wounds Chelsea thought had long healed. By weaving these threads together, the displacement of Smitty, the confrontation between Grayson and Derek, the professional gamble at Fenmore's, and the emotional fallout between Cott and Nicolith week of January 2630 positions itself as a turning point rather than a detour. The crossover with the young and the restless does not overwhelm the identity of Beyond the Gates, but instead sharpens it, highlighting how proximity to power and legacy can magnify existing insecurities rather than resolve them. Every character involved is pushed slightly out of alignment, nudged into spaces where they can no longer rely on habit or hierarchy to protect them. And in a community built on appearances, that loss of equilibrium may prove more dangerous than any overt scandal. What unfolds is not a single dramatic event, but the quiet realization that once worlds begin to overlap, there is no easy way back to the comfort of separation. And every choice made in that overlap carries consequences that linger long after the weekends. The sleepless night that overtakes Bradley Smitty Smith is not marked by chaos or visible danger, but by the slow, corrosive weight of secrecy pressing against his conscience. In another part of the city, far from the rhythms of home, Smitty finds himself unable to rest, not because he fears being discovered, but because every hour that passes without explanation fractures the trust he has so carefully built. His absence does not go unnoticed. Martin Richardson lies awake, his concern deepening into suspicion as the night stretches on and Smitty fails to return. Martin is not a man who jumps to conclusions lightly, yet this silence feels different, heavier, as though it carries intent. The question is not merely where Smitty is, but what he chose not to explain. At the core of that unspoken distance lies the secret investigation Smitty has been conducting alongside Jacob Hawthorne, a dangerous entanglement that blurs the line between loyalty and betrayal. Telling Martin would mean exposing not just a covert operation, but the possibility that Smitty himself no longer knows where his moral boundary lies, and so he remains silent, convincing himself that one more night of omission is safer than a truth that could dismantle everything. That silence mirrors another, equally destructive one unfolding elsewhere. Naomi Hawthorne continues to hide the results of her BRCA genetic test from Jacob, fully aware that the longer she waits, the more devastating the truth may become. Her secrecy is not rooted in deception for gain, but in fear that once spoken aloud, the knowledge will redefine her future, her body, and her marriage. Naomi understands that genetic truth does not exist in isolation. It ripples outward, demanding decisions, forcing vulnerability, and stripping away the illusion of control. Each moment she delays telling Jacob is both an act of self-preservation and unconscious punishment, a way of holding on to the last fragments of normalcy before the weight of reality presses in. Yet Jacob, already under strain from other forces, senses that something is wrong, even if he cannot name it, and the emotional distance between them quietly widens. Jacob's life, already precariously balanced, grows more unstable as conflict with his father escalates. Sheriff Elon Hawthorne is not merely a concerned parent. He is a lawman who understands the cost of being too close to a serious case. and the danger of being too deeply involved in one that threatens to spiral out of control. Ellen's worrying is layered with frustration, torn between professional duty and paternal instinct, as he watches his son drift further into a case that carries consequences neither of them can fully predict. Their arguments are not loud or theatrical, but edged with disappointment and fear, the kind that festers because neither man knows how to retreat without appearing weak. Elon sees the warning signs clear with exhaustion, the secrecy. The way Jacob has begun to internalize responsibility for outcomes far beyond his control, and he fears that this case may ultimately cost his son more than his career. While the Hawthorne family wrestles with hidden truths and generational conflict, consequences come swiftly and decisively for Tomas Navarro. At the law office of Bill Hamilton, power is reasserted in its most calculated form. Bill makes it unmistakably clear that Tomas's elevation to partner status is not a reward, but a contract home that demands silence as its price. The kiss with Donnie Dupree is no longer a private indiscretion, it is leverage. Bill's lesson is not delivered with threats or raised voices, but with cold precision, reminding Tomas that ambition often comes shackled to compromise. Tomas leaves that office fully aware that his professional success now depends on his willingness to bury desire, guilt, and truth beneath loyalty enforced by fear. As time passes, Bill attempts to mend another fracture, reaching out to Vernon Dupree in an effort to reconcile past wrongs. The attempt falls flat. Vernon's response is distant, unwelcoming, and heavy with unresolved resentment. A reminder that not all bridges can be rebuilt simply because one party decides it is convenient. This emotional rejection coincides with a far more unsettling development when Bill receives troubling news connected to recent medical test results. The information lands with quiet gravity, forcing Bill to confront a vulnerability he has long denied. For a man accustomed to controlling narratives, this uncertainty represents a loss of authority over his own body, an irony that does not escape him. The repercussions of Bill's emotional withdrawal are felt most acutely by his wife, Haley Hamilton, who begins to feel increasingly isolated. Whether the sense of abandonment stems directly from Bill's distraction or from another presence encroaching on her already fragile world remains unclear, but the effect is undeniable. Haley's frustration deepens as time passes without progress on the secret plan she has come to obsess over, the darkly ironic Kill Bill scheme that has so far yielded nothing, a disappointment. Her patience thins, replaced by growing restlessness that borders on recklessness. Haley is not a woman accustomed to failure, and as obstacles continue to mount, the possibility that she may intensify her efforts becomes less a question of if than when. Taken together, these intertwined storylines form a week defined not by explosive reveals, but by erosion of trust, of certainty, of the illusion that secrets can be contained without consequence. Smitty's absence, Naomi's silence, Jacob's conflict with his father, Tomas's forced obedience, Bill's failing health, and Haley's escalating desperation all point toward the same unsettling truth. Control is slipping through everyone's fingers. Each character believes they are managing their own crisis, yet every decision they make tightens the web connecting them. In Beyond the Gates, it is never the moment of impact that proves most dangerous, but the slow, sleepless nights leading up to it, when fear has time to grow teeth and silence becomes its most effective weapon.